Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. I thought of making this video after listening to a recent podcast by Martin Armstrong, somebody who I've listened to for some time now. He's a former advisor to President Ronald Reagan, amongst many, many other things. Very smart guy. I put the link in the description below to that podcast. But in there, he talks about so-called CBDCs, the BRICS, the OECD. Well, he doesn't go into the OECD specifically, but talking about money laundering and tax evasion and all of this stuff. And he brought up a really good point as regards CBDC. The thing to understand and keep in mind here is this is about surveillance, and it's also about tax policy. And he brings that up in that podcast. And it's the brainchild of a bunch of bureaucrats who really don't have a lot of understanding about how the real world works. As he says in his own podcast, you know, oftentimes these government people who he consulted over the years, the one thing they never ever see is that they might be the problem, that the government itself sticking its nose into the workings of the free market and into the financial transactions, business transactions of regular day-to-day people, that is the problem. I mean, if nothing else proved that, the fall of the Soviet Union proved that is the problem. That's what people don't like. And they won't allow a society to maintain itself like that for a very long period of time. But what I thought was interesting is he brought up these notions of tax havens and money laundering and things. Again, it's because these people have a very, honestly, simplistic way of looking at the world. They see it, again, through a bureaucrat's eyes, but they say, hey, if I can just get full transparency of all transactions, you know, they seem to think that 35%, for example, of the overall economy in the West, for example, is off the books. And if they can just get that on the books, they make 35% more in revenue. Well, the fact of the matter is that's not practically how it ever works. People will always find workarounds. They already are. You know, cryptocurrency to one extent may operate as that, although I don't think it's the workaround many think it is. Meanwhile, precious metals and demand for them, especially physical precious metals, is exploding. And part of the reason for this is people don't like constant surveillance and just doing their business. And I'm sick and tired of this, well, if you don't have anything to hide. No. Privacy is a right precisely because we all have something to hide at the end of the day. We have a right to hide things from the public. We have a right to a private life, you know, and we have a right to private transactions. And the OECD, you know, the BRICS, in my mind, I've seen a lot of people who are out there viewing that as some sort of savior. I'm not so sure. I mean, you got China involved, you got Russia involved. Russia's got internal passports, for gosh sakes. I'm not saying they're terrible, horrible people, but, you know, that's, you know, internal passports always creeps me out. I remember doing videos on that back during COVID. Meanwhile, in China, you got social credit scores. These are not people who necessarily prioritize liberty to the same extent as folks in the free West, as well as free Asia, prioritize liberty and privacy of financial transactions. And again, this notion of money laundering and tax havens, he brings up in that podcast as well that Christine Lagarde some years ago, when she was heading up the IMF, went after all these so-called tax havens, basically weaponizing SWIFT against them. That's part of what he talks about in there, that SWIFT has been used as a cudgel against many jurisdictions over the years, and this has led to the rise of BRICS. And again, I go back to just the issue of privacy. You know, why is it the business of the IMF what kind of money I'm holding in the Cayman Islands? Why is that any of their concern? And I'm sick and tired of this, oh, well, there could have been some crime. Well, then prove a crime. Prove a crime against somebody. Put somebody through due process. Have to meet the elements of a crime. Stop weaponizing your ability to control our bank accounts arbitrarily and capriciously. You know, is that what the new system is going to look like, your new world order, to quote both TASS talking about the BRICS and pretty much every technocrat in the West and the WEF, the World Economic Forum, all these folks? Is that what it's going to be? Is just you want to surveil us all the time so that, you know, you can tax us into oblivion? I'm sorry, I'm just not on board with it. Meanwhile, the term money laundering was made up in 1987. All it really means is moving your own money around in a way the government doesn't really like. And meanwhile, the notion of a tax haven, whatever happened to the Westphalian notion of sovereignty? You know, we're a country, hey, we're country X, we're country Y. Here in this country, you want to do banking with full privacy, that's your business, fine. Why is it the remit of some international banking agency that nobody elected any of their membership to? Why isn't it in their remit to interfere with all of our banking activities, all of us little guys throughout the world who just want to do our business and do it in some level of privacy, because we don't want to have a constant nose of the nanny state in our personal business. Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm sorry, all of this buzzwords about money laundering, tax havens, central bank digital currencies, whatever, I'm getting pretty tired of it. It all looks like just a ruse to me to strip away what little financial privacy the little guy, the common man of the world, has left.